So this is the last of the four little mini lectures to help you with the first exam, help with your preparation. And this reviews the key slide that I posted. You'll find a little key posted, a key slide module on Brightspace. And this one has to do with pulling together all the activity-based costing. Remember, we had a single plant-wide rate, we had multiple production departments, and then we had the most accurate method, which is the most complex, was the activity-based costing. So what I want you to do here, we're looking at the one we reviewed in class. This is Exhibit 10. I believe I made this as a handout as well. So the first thing you got to do is you got to get the activity rate. So activity rate for fabrication, for assembly, for setup, for quality control inspection, for engineering charges. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different activities. So you got to come up with the cost, the activity rates. And once you come up with that activity rate, notice we use the same activity rate for snowmobiles. So the first half of this is snowmobiles going across. And then we've got the riding mower over here. So for both of them, we use the same activity rate. So when you have a problem like this, where you're asked to come up with the overhead per equivalent unit, come up first with the various overhead rates for each of the activities. And then once you do that, multiply by the level of activity. So it took 7,000 direct labor hours in fabrication for snowmobiles, 3,000 direct labor hours for assembly. Notice the rates are very different. There were 100 setups times 4,000, 100 inspections times 3,000, and 12 engineering changes at 13,000. So multiply the activity times the rate, and you get the total activity cost there of 1,231,000. Then you have to divide that by the number of units manufactured, which was 1,000, which gave us that factory overhead per equivalent factory overhead cost per product there of 1,231. Right, so that's the so we need to do this for the two products. So there's the snowmobiles, and then over here, same calculation. Come up for the riding mowers, get the rate, activity rate, multiplied by the usage. So the rate times the usage. So you've got total overhead cost for the riding mowers of 369,000 divided by 1,000, and you got 369. Now, if you remember this example, when we started out, we used a single plant-wide rate. We actually came up with an overhead that was the same for each product. When you notice, when you do activity-based, it's far different. And the cost of the snowmobile for overhead is significantly higher than it is for riding mowers. And that has to do with the fact that if you look up above, look at the difference in the cost. So we had fabrication costs for snowmobiles of 315,000, whereas for riding mowers it was only 45,000. And then also with regard to look how the inspections, it was 300,000 for snowmobile and only 12,000 for riding mowers. And look at the engineering changes. It was 156,000 for snowmobiles and was only 52,000 for riding mowers. So remember, when you use activity-based costing, although it's the most complex, you get the most accurate allocation of the overhead charges. And the reason the overhead charges are different is the rates are different in each department, and the amount of time it takes for each department, or the amount of activity, is very different as well. Right? So I would suggest you use this particular slide. So I gave it to you as a handout. You also can find it in key slides. Use this as a job aid as you do the the take-home problem, which in many ways is similar to this. All right, so let's stop sharing here, and let me take you to the practice multiple choice, which are at the back of chapter 4, and there we are. Okay. Now, the first one, again, always good to think of what the right answer is, and then go looking for it amongst the choices. Which of the following is most accurate? So these are all statements about the three types of ways of applying overhead: a single plant-wide rate, multiple production departments, or activity-based. So we're looking for the statement that is the most accurate. So let's see. A, single plant-wide factory overhead rate. Well, what I want you to do here, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I would like you to do these questions on your own. So pause the tape here, take 15 minutes do your best shot without checking at the answers for each of these questions, and then come on back and I'll walk you through each one and compare your answers to the ones that I provide. Okay, so pause the tape here. Give yourself 15 minutes to answer these 5 questions. So they're both definitional and computational, which is, again, similar to what you're going to have on your take-home exam, on the in-class part of your exam on Thursday. Okay, so take a 15-minute break and then come on back. So welcome back from having experienced these 5 questions over the last 15 minutes. So we're looking for the statement that is the most accurate. So a single plant-wide factory overhead rate will usually provide management with accurate product costs. Now, we know that's not true based on our experience in class, okay, where we ended up with an equal allocation. Then when we finally got to activity-based, we saw that the overhead allocation was quite different when we used the activity-based. So A is not very good. B, activity-based costing can be used by management to determine accurate profitability. Well, that sounds, I don't see anything wrong with that statement. That statement looks pretty good. Said that activity-based was the most accurate. C, multiple production department overhead rate will usually result in more product cost distortion than a single. No, that's not true. You get less product, get less distortion with the multiple production departments. That one's not true. D, generally accepted accounting principles require activity-based costing. That's not true. It's not required by GAAP, although it's the most accurate. So the best of all those statements, I would say, is A, and that is indeed true. And if you want a further explanation for that, you click on here. Okay, activity-based costing provides accurate product costs, which can be used for profitability analysis. So the answer there is B. Next one. San Medeo Company had the following factory overhead costs. So these are your costs. So here's your total overhead here. So to add these up, so the overhead would be made up of power, indirect labor, and depreciation. So you add those all up, 120 plus 60 plus 500. That's your total overhead costs. And the budgeted, it was supposed to work 20,000 direct labor hours, 20,000 direct labor hours. So you want to get the overhead cost per hour. So you'd add up all these, you divide by 20,000. And when you do that, you get $34 an hour. And then it says product M requires 6 direct labor hours per unit in the factory. So then you would multiply 6 times the 34. Okay. So if you do that, I think you get an answer there, I believe is C, 204. So yes, it is 204. And here's how it's calculated. So you get your single plant-wide rate, which is $34 an hour. And then it's 6 direct labor hours to manufacture the product. 6 times 34 gives you 204. Number 3, which of the following activity bases would be best used to allocate setup activity to products? Well, setup activity to products would be based on the number of production runs. That would be the allocation that we would use. So let's take a look at the choices. Number of inspections, no. That would be inspections. Direct labor hours, machine hours, that wouldn't be true. That would be more for the various departments like fabrication, assembly. Number of production runs, that sounds good. I think the answer is D, and that is indeed the answer. The answer is D. If you want to take a deeper dive on that, get a little explanation here. So the number of production runs best relates the activity cost of setup to the products. All right, number 4, production department, and we got 2 production departments, 1 and 2. So they had separate factory overhead budgets, and they had separate level of activities. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to come up with the rate for production department 1 and the rate for department 2. And then the question is, we've got a product T, and is allocated. We're using multiple production methods. So when we come up with the rate for production department 1, it's 5 hours in production department 1. And we come up with the rate for department 2, it's 2 direct hours in production department 2. So this one has 2 phases. So first thing you got to do is you got to come up with the rate for production department. So you got 26,000 divided by 5,000. That gives you 5.2 per hour. And then you've got 48,000 divided by 5,000. That gives you 9.6 per hour. Okay, so those are your two rates per each department. Then you multiply by the amount of time in each department. So it's 5 hours in production department 1. So that would be 5 times 5.2, and 2 in production department 2. So that would be 2 times 9.6. So if you add those all together, figure that all out, I think it's 4520 is your correct answer. And how do we get there? Okay, so there's your two production rates. So department 1, it's 520 per hour. Department 2, it's 960 per hour. And then product T is 5 hours in 1 and 2 hours in 2. So that's how we got the 4520. Okay. This next one, it'd be pretty confusing at first, but then if you focus on the right things, it's not so confusing. So we've got the following activities are associated with moving cars by rail, right? So we've got a charge for $4 per gross ton. So that's one rate, $4 per ton. So you have to figure out, well, how much weight are we going to have if the charge is $4 per ton? And then we've got a switching cost, which is every time we switch a car is 50. So we have to figure ourselves how many times do we switch the cars. And then we've got a per rail cost of $200 per rail car. So those are your rates, and now you have to figure them out in terms of what the total charge is going to be. Right? So you're going to have to figure out the weight. You're going to have to figure out the switching. You're going to have to figure out the per cost. Okay. And when I worked this through, I came up with 86,000, which is D. And let's see how we got there. So it is 86,000. Okay. So the 100 times 20 times 10 times 4, that's the weight charge, which is 80,000. And then you got the cost per car was $200, and you got 20 cars. Okay, so that gives you 4,000. And then you got the switching costs. You got 20 cars, and they switched twice, and it was $50. That's where you got the $2,000. So you add them all together, it's the 86,000. Okay. So that concludes my little review of Chapter 4. Again, take-home part is pretty straightforward, particularly with the job aids that I've given you. The trickiest part, I can tell you from experience, is the multiple choice. So get as much practice as you can with the multiple choice. So in addition to following along on this lecture and struggling with these multiple choice questions on your own before looking at the answers, look at the practice multiple choice questions on Brightspace for Chapter 4, and look at the adaptive exercise for Chapter 4. Okay, so I wish you well on the exam, and we'll see you on Thursday. Remember, no ticky, no shirty, as they say. So when you come in, you've got to have the take-home part of your exam on Thursday, and then I will give you the multiple choice part. Answer all the questions in the take-home. Make sure you write your name at the top, and make sure you study for the multiple choice. All right, au revoir, everybody. Adios, hasta luego. Chick-fil-A Cow and I wish you well on your exam, and we will see you on Thursday. Continue. This snowy weather gives you plenty of time to prepare and study. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.